All right, everyone. Thank you for joining with us today for another episode of Cloud Colombo. Hope all of you are keeping well and safe because that's very important these days. Just make sure that your health and your loved ones' health are in order. In Cloud Colombo, we discuss cutting-edge cloud technologies, tools, new frontiers, and more with experienced professionals in the industry from around the world. As more enterprises and startups are embracing digital technology, cloud has become a de facto paradigm that everyone is exploring and bringing up their competitiveness. So it's quite interesting to see how fast the companies are moving and adapting cloud technologies, especially cloud native technologies, in which in return makes technology makers innovators, with technology making innovators to work at an accelerated pace, I would say, and help the companies to kind of move forward with the technological kind of the advancements as well. So at the core of these technologies, what all these technology makers are trying to do is that to make life easy for the developers, because it's very important to increase their productivity and also to kind of think on the developing velocities as well. So today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic on how an ambitious company is building a program language. So you might have worked with Java, you might have worked with Go, or maybe you might have worked with C Sharp in different type of languages, or even Python, which is one of the popular languages these days. But this particular language can be a little different because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make life easier for developers by making or rather carrying out cloud operations easily and in a very native way. So I think more than me talking about that, I would love to have a speaker who would love to and who's like really passionate, who's been like hands-on and very involved by to build this particular language. So this programming language is called Ballerina, and we have this interesting speaker joining with us from Silicon Valley. It's pretty late for him, but he's joining with us because he's like super passionate about this whole product, and he has been speaking about it for quite some time now. So we have Anjana Fernando joining with us today. Anjana is a director of developer relations at WC2. He has built up the expertise in data analytics and enterprise integration by leading several products at WC2. He has also helped numerous customers in implementing their integration strategies. And his latest venture in his role in the Ballerina project, where he had been involved extensively in the design and implementation of the language and its runtime, and primarily works on its ecosystem engineering and evangelism activities. As you can see, we have the right person to talk to us about Ballerina, which is a cloud native programming language. Anjana has a little bit of different definition to that now, but we'll ask about that from Anjana in a little while, in a little short moment. Before we welcome Anjana, so that's his profile. That's the person who's going to join with us today. So without taking much time, let's invite Anjana to the show. Anjana.
Hi, hey,
Thank you.
How's it
How are
going?
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah. Thank you for keeping you up so late.
No worries. Happy
We
to be
know
here.
you're passionate about the whole technological things that you're building up as well. But at the same time, I think it's even more like great to see that you are sacrificing your sleep to join with us today. So Anjana, before we start off with the questions
Yeah.
and more of these things, I would love to hear a little bit of things that you miss the most during the lockdown time,
Oh,
especially in US. What did you miss the most?
yeah. So, yeah, for me, I would say like the restrictions on traveling. So I miss going back home actually to Sri Lanka. So we had several plans on like going back home, staying for a while, but with the pandemic, we can't do any of those now. So it's
That's very true.
yeah,
That's very true.
pretty hard
I
now.
think, yeah, everyone abroad who wants to go back to Sri Lanka is like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yes.
don't want to go to the quarantine time over there. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully things will be better, and then
Yep.
we can kind of like go back and see our parents, be with our loved ones too.
Definitely.
Awesome. So I think we have quite a good number of people who have tuned in with us today in YouTube. People who are joining with us in YouTube, please do make sure that you drop your comments, questions in the Q&A section, so we'll be able to get Anjana to answer those out. Because like towards the end of the program, after the questions are over, we'll be getting some questions from the audience as well. So please do make sure you drop it in the Q&A section. So Anjana, first things first, because a lot of people were asking once we started talking about like, hey, Ballerina, a cloud native programming language. They were asking, hey, what exactly is Ballerina? And what were the reasons that you had to come up with a programming language instead of using an existing one? So that's the first question.
Yeah. So as you said, so Ballerina is created by WSO2. So WSO2 is mainly so we mainly do products on integration and API management. So with time, we wanted to find more solutions to do these integration technologies in a better manner. So we were trying out different methods, technologies, and so we figured out, okay, we need more flexibility in the way we define integrations and like modern day of programming. So like nowadays, integrations or programming mostly contains talking with networked services, or like you will not be like doing things alone, but you will be communicating with other external services, things in the cloud, things like that. You had to always interface with these network services. So we wanted a better way of doing this. So we needed the agility also, not like very heavyweight products like DSLs that do these things. But to get the agility, so we had to move more towards a general purpose programming language. But they like the existing ones provide very low level functionality. So their level of abstraction is very low. Like when you want to talk to a network service or anything like that, they have very basic ones. Like, okay, you do a network connection, do something, and so on. So we wanted a solution that increases this level of abstraction to understand the network that is around you and to understand the services, the challenges you get with talking with network services and so on. So that's what we try to do mainly. So we wanted like a modern programming language that understands the challenges we have now and the most often activities. So which are the network communications, and like when it comes to that, like resiliency and the cloud deployments and so on, all of those comes into play. So that's those are the main design elements we wanted. So that's where we ended up with Ballerina. So yeah, those are the like few of the main things.
Okay, awesome. So I think Kanjana, that you pointed out like very well that nowadays like most of the developers will be concerned about, hey, how can I talk to the cloud? Is there an easy way that I should do rather than going through like different technologies, getting different pieces into one place? Rather than doing that, how can we get like I think the idea is Ballerina to create like a one-stop shop. You just code it out and then you deploy into different environments that you like. I think one of the main key areas that like our viewers will be interested in is also about knowing what are the type of native activities that we can do. That will ask in a later question as well. Just before moving on to that question, I think um, I would love to kind of hear from you. Anjana, like what are the reasons that you think developers should start using Ballerina over any other language, or should they use it like hand in hand, or what's your perspective? Um,
Yeah. So I mentioned integration earlier. So the reality is now integration is not a specialization. Now, when you write modern programs, everything becomes an integration. So like programming is the integration. So when you know only do programming, you will like more certainly interact with other systems, other network services, and so on. So it's not a like a specialized or niche thing that you do in like only in enterprises, but you will always do it. You always have to communicate with these external systems and so on. So it is becoming more mainstream now. That means that's why we believe that a programming language itself should have these concepts built in. So that's what we have Ballerina. Like the most common operations nowadays will be much easier and much productive to do in a language like Ballerina. So when you have those things, or else you will find yourself mostly doing like building things from scratch to come to that level to do those things effectively, rather than like focusing on business logic. So you have like you will most often like create that layer yourself. So we want to like reduce that barrier, have the like most often used features that people want, like features for observability, containerization, and so on, built into the system, the ecosystem that we work with the language. So that's why you should like seriously consider these tools and the languages you will use in when creating like modern like projects. So that's one of the main reasons I would say.
Awesome. So I think like if any one of you is thinking, hey, a Ballerina, we don't have to initialize any of those like variables. We don't have any those type of function, etc. But that's not the case, right? Anjana, it works as like a normal like a language. What's the closest? Before we move on to the other question, like what's the closest language that you think Ballerina is much more closer to? Because the reason, if someone wants to get started with Ballerina, if the person is a Go developer or maybe a Java developer or a I don't know Python developer, what's the sort of the closest language that you think Ballerina is close to?
So syntax wise, it's very similar to like the C++, Java level syntax. So you will find the syntax very familiar with those languages. So it's not like there's no steep learning curve to get to the basics. The language has like it has borrowed like several concepts from multiple languages. Like
Yeah,
we get like the good parts that are there implemented like other languages. So we base some of our features on those. So we are very much influenced by those aspects as well. For example, you'll find similar features in Ballerina, like in that you find in Go, Rust, so Java, and so on. So there are like some of the related good features we do adapt in Ballerina as well,
yeah,
but in a meaningful manner, of course. So if you are familiar with languages like I would say Java, C Sharp, even C, you should be able to fairly quickly grasp the syntax and get productive with it very quickly.
yeah. Okay, that's very interesting because our viewers who are joining in might be familiar with one of those major languages which have been currently used, and
Yeah.
I think this will be like easy for folks to kind of like get on to it and then kind of like get hands on, etc. Because I know for a fact, we have the Ballerina. Ballerina has a community, very active community in Slack as well. So I'll just put down the link over here in case if you want to join in. So I've seen like there are different conversations going on in terms of like how actually Ballerina works as a programming language currently as well. So in case if you're interested, please do go and join the Slack channel so you can join the conversation over there. Now you brought in a very interesting topic that even though Ballerina is a language, it also has the capability to do integrations. It has the capability to do like cloud native type of activities.
Yeah.
Anjana, what type of activities can Ballerina do?
So,
Yeah,
when you say cloud native, so to be cloud native, okay, first thing is it should support like containerization. So
yeah,
the whole idea of like containers, then you like create a lot of, so like in a services scenario, you like microservices, deploy them in containers, and deploy it in like container orchestration service like Kubernetes. So to have this cloud nativeness, and there are other supporting features like observability that comes into play as well. So it's a list of all these features that will make it cloud native to work in that manner in with those concepts.
yeah,
So Ballerina is also considered like cloud native because it supports these things in its platform itself. So
yeah,
like if you like writing about our service, we can like very easily deploy that as a containerized application. And as for other target deployment as well, like Kubernetes and so on. And it also has like a unique ability where we can automatically observe the applications we write. So you don't have to write code to actually observe the services and so on that you have, but it does like the default the best effort of observing those aspects like network endpoints and so on. So in the language is aware of these aspects in the language like network endpoints, listeners, and so on. It can observe these things much more effectively by default. So
yeah,
those things make it like very suitable for those environments, like cloud native environments, to
yeah.
deploy them and so on. So yeah, those are a few of the main aspects.
Yeah, awesome. So I think Anjana, there are a couple of questions also coming in, which we can later move into during the Q&A section. Please do keep those questions coming in so we can get those answered after the Q questions are over. The best part is, in case if you're wondering, is there a demo? Yes, we'll have a demo as well. Anjan will show some of the unique features that you can do using Ballerina, and then you can see the syntaxes. Then you can see what Ballerina can do very quickly as well. All right. So moving on to the next question. Anjana, now when it comes to coding, or maybe coding in different cloud environments. One thing is people build applications in different cloud environments. They'll use serverless technologies. They just upload their code, let the infrastructure run it. And then there's another way is that you write a code so that you can have infrastructure spinned out for you. Where we say it's infrastructure as code as well, right? So is Ballerina infrastructure as code, or Ballerina is not infrastructure as code, or what's the difference?
So what Ballerina does is Ballerina helps in the deployment to your infrastructure. So like as I mentioned earlier, like providing features to deploy the Ballerina applications and services to a target environment. So it
Yep.
can be like for Kubernetes, serverless platforms like Lambda, Azure Functions, and so on. So it certainly helps in those things. So it has built-in functionality to when it concerning the Ballerina application and its other supporting features, but it doesn't play a general role as infrastructure as code.
Yep.
Like from Ballerina, you don't use it to like build up like some random infrastructure to be deployed, like like for example in Pulumi is a technology that like a tool and like sort of library that does that actually. So
Yep.
what the Pulumi is infrastructure as code. So what they do is they have tools and set of libraries for different programming languages.
Yep.
Using the programming language, you can define your infrastructure. So by using like programming statements saying, I want this to be created and see this and this and this. So they can do that. So from Pulumi, so if you want Like you can get a Ballerina application and deploy that to also using Pulumi if you want. You can package it up and so on. So that is a general infrastructure as code technology. Ballerina concentrates more on its own applications and how they are deployed. So if you have a Ballerina application, it takes care of that application being deployed to any environment, anything that's relevant. So that's sort of like a subtle difference there. So anything that's related to Ballerina, we take care of that, the infrastructure and so on. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's clear differentiation between those two, where Ballerina can do infrastructure as a code as well, but not necessarily is a tool to build infrastructure as a code, which is that's a very good explanation, I think, because we can get that thing out of the way. Otherwise, folks will think, hey, is Ballerina going to do infrastructure as a code? Then Pulumi, as you said, is already doing it as well. So that brings up to an interesting another point is that now there are different services around, like different cloud providers where they have their own, like a lot of folks have started using more rather than using their own data centers. They would rather migrate their applications into the cloud, into different vendors. What do you call vendors platforms. Either they'll go hybrid or they'll go like completely on cloud, etc. So now, so the question comes in now when it comes to like the connection between Ballerina and these cloud providers. I think there's this very huge type of like an activity or maybe like a development going on inside Ballerina as well, which are like the Ballerina connectors. So can you can explain us about what are Ballerina connectors and how those are like relevant to any of the cloud developers as well?
Yeah, so connectors, we call in this, so network awareness of the language. So as I mentioned, in Ballerina, these network clients, endpoints, the listeners, and so on are first-class citizens.
Yeah.
So the language understands them. They make special considerations when we are using them, like as I mentioned, like observability and other optimizations. So so connectors, so there is a special construct that you can write specific connectors to Ballerina. So as you mentioned as well, like for cloud services, so like database connectors, anything. So there's a list of connectors we have done for ourselves as well in Ballerina that ships by default with the standard library, and also there are like other connectors that are hosted in a central repository that we call Ballerina Central. So you can find that at central.ballerina.io. So it's like a common place or a centralized place where anyone can push their connectors and any module actually to that place, and others can use it. So others can import it and use it in their own applications. So any network connector, any type of module can be hosted there in that way. So we by default push some of these connectors to central so people can use them.
Yeah. So now, when it comes to like the central, which means that do you have is there a like an approval process that you follow, or like anyone can?
At this moment, no. So anyone can actually, so they can create an account there. So we track who's sending what. So they can create an account and push to the repo. For the moment, we don't have such an approval process. So for the moment, it's like anything will go in. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I think everyone who's watching this video, if they're interested in building connectors, etc., just go to central.ballerina.io so you can get an idea about what type of connectors are available as well. So if you're interested, you can use them. If you're interested in building like a connector, you can do that as well. And apart from that, the team is also, I think, working on different connectors so that it'll help out more developers easily connect to whichever the services that they want to connect into. Awesome. So I think before moving on to the final question, Anjana, how was it like building up a programming language? What were the challenges? What were the like the most memorable moments that you had?
Well, yeah. So I actually joined the Ballerina team like not right at the beginning. So
Yeah.
the project was started by our CEO Dr. Sanjeev Everyvarna, and now headed by him and James Clark. So so they are the main leads, and along with Samir Jason. So I joined like after like 2 years afterwards. So it was a very interesting experience for me. So like I haven't worked with programming languages before, so I got to learn about like programming language theory, like how to write, how these parsers work, and all the internal. So it was very interesting. Like technically, I got to work with all the aspects of like writing compilers and all these things. So so it was a very interesting learning experience for me, and to see how it grew, and it's in a very very nice place now, to like seeing the adoption by people. So
Yeah.
after the engineering team, so that then I moved into developer relations.
Yeah.
That's how I came to US actually. So now I get to see like get to like show it to other people on how to use it to spread the word.
Yeah. Awesome. So again, moving on to the final question, Anjana, what are the type of like major questions that you get from all the developers? Uh, Maybe based out of US or maybe any other country or maybe even a Slack channel. What are the like the common questions people tend to ask around Ballerina? All right, I think we'll have Anjana joining in with us in a little moment. Awesome. So I think until Anjana joins us back, so please do keep in touch. Like drop your questions in the comment section, so we'll be able to get those answered through Anjana. Yeah, Anjana is
Oh,
back.
sorry, my
No
internet.
worries.
Sorry
No
about
worries. So it's like asking our viewers to drop their questions. I think we have a bunch coming in as well. So Anjana, you are
Yeah. So
explaining.
I was answering questions. Yeah. So one of the main questions is, so for someone who's totally new to the language would be some of the questions you asked as well. So like what it's used for, like what are the main use cases, like why a new language. So the most common question is that because doing like creating a new programming language is not easy, and getting it like adopted by people is much more harder.
Yeah.
So because they will because people stick with their like use program languages for a long time.
That's true.
They don't like to change. So those are the main questions that then we have to explain, like why possibly you want to check it out and so on.
Yeah.
So those kind of questions are the questions by the beginners mainly.
Yeah.
Like so yeah. And then yeah, so other people
They'll ask very specific questions, I think.
it's specific questions, yeah, on how to do
Very
something.
specific questions. So Anjana, now it's very interesting to see like how different developers have started using Ballerina. So what's your recommendation? As in, is it recommended for any developer starting from a student developer to a professional developer? I think it's mainly meant for professionals who are just starting off, right? Is it only for them? Can startups use it? Can enterprises use it? What's the sort of target audience for you?
So yeah, so basically anyone can use it. So it's still a
Yeah.
general purpose language.
Yeah.
So anyone starting programming also. So actually, myself and Lakmal wrote a book on Ballerina, so for beginners.
Yeah.
So it's a beginning programming book. So we did that actually to prove that you can use Ballerina to learn to program.
Yeah.
So so anyone who is like totally new can follow that and learn programming. So the language can be used for that as well. So it's not just for the enterprises to do these things. So as I mentioned, it's a new way of programming. It's for programming for the in the modern way. So it still has the basics, so still has fundamentals, the low-level things, as well as the high-level abstractions I mentioned. So it covers a full spectrum of things. So anyone can use it for any kind of use cases, I would say.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because if you were wondering, hey, is it only for people who are working at different companies? It's not. It's for anyone who are just getting started off learning programming. They still can use Ballerina as well. And I'll post it up in the link that Anjana and Lakmal has written as well. Go and check it out. That will be valuable for you as well. So we are moving on to the final question, which is pretty much everyone who wants to know, hey, how can I get started? What are the toolings and documentations should I refer to?
Yes, so the main thing is you can just go to the website ballerina.io. So we have like a comprehensive list of examples where we call Ballerina by example. So it's a list of examples for like each of the prominent features we have in Ballerina, starting from the basics.
Yeah.
So if you go, there's a huge list of examples categorized there. So you can actually, especially if you have programmed in another language, you will be able to quickly grasp what are the things and get productive quickly. So that would be the first place. And after that, we do have the API documentation there as well. And also we have some specific user guide like pages for like other unique topics, like maybe observability and so on, like how to write a connector and so on. So there are some aspects as those kind of aspects there as well. And for anyone like hardcore want to know the internals of the language, the language specification is there. So if you like to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. So that's there as well. And in case if you go to Ballerina documentation, it'll have like how you can get started guide to all the documentation that you need, like initializing your variables to writing functions to etc. Everything will be available there as well. And I think Anjana also mentioned about the community, which is in Ballerina Slack. You can go and join there, ask questions, so that the team will be able to answer. And then Anjana also mentioned that there's a newsletter, Ballerina newsletter. If you want to learn like the latest updates coming from Ballerina, you can join the newsletter as well. So awesome, Anjana. So
Right.
what we can do is now we can actually move on to the demo.
Demos. Yep.
So yeah, so people can see how
Yeah.
actually Ballerina will look like.
Definitely. So okay, I'll share my screen. Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just screen.
Okay. So this is a typical like a small Ballerina program. So what I'm going to show is a small integration scenario where I'm creating an HTTP service with Ballerina and calling some external services. Like I'm going to do like a geolocation and geocode scenario where I'm going to identify my location using my like source IP, using the geolocation API, and then I'm going to do like a reverse geocode to find the address. So those are all done by these Google APIs. So you can go to the Google APIs website and find the documentation. So I'll start with these constructs in Ballerina, like what they are. So you can see here first, in Ballerina, we have a service construct in the language. So of course, we can just have a main function as well, and that can be the entry point for the program, and we can just use them in the general way. So just do a hello world like this, and so on. So so that kind of those kind of programs can also be built using Ballerina. So as a normal application. Also, the other entry point is through services. So in Ballerina, there can be many types of services. The service type is depending on the type of listener that we associate with the service. So here we have an HTTP listener saying,
Anjana,
yes.
I think there's a quick request.
Uh-huh.
If you can zoom in the code a little.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Will do.
Follow.
Is this okay?
Yeah, I think this should be fine.
Okay, cool. Um, yes, I was explaining. So service type is mandated by decided by this type of listener you associate with it or like bound to it. So we have an HTTP listener here, which says, okay, listen to port 8080 and so on. So I'm creating this HTTP listener instance in line. So you can create it outside also with more properties like certificate information in the HTTPS scenario and so on. So here I'm just doing it in a single line because it's a simple scenario. So in a service, we have these things called resource functions. So it's a normal function with a resource qualifier. So this can be mapped to a specific HTTP resource or a subpath. So you can customize this by giving path parameter here. Likewise, or else it will use the default resource name as the path. And so here, so we just have a representation for the caller, and the request caller represents the actual entity that's making the call. So we can interact with that, like sending responses and so on. And the request represents the actual request that's coming in. So this resource format will change on the type of service you do. Like for example, we have these services for like gRPC, WebSockets, and so on. So then these resource function formats may change, like on what type of service that we are doing. Then these HTTP client we are creating. So here, so this is one of those connectors we have in Ballerina. So these are specially understood by the language to do those optimizations I mentioned earlier. Likewise, we have connectors for other cloud services and so on. So here it's simply an HTTP connector. So the significance of this is, as I mentioned, the language understand them, and in those connectors we have something called remote methods. So they are basically a bit different than normal function calls or method calls. So here you can see here, this one is a normal method call where it's separated by a dot, and these are symbolized with an arrow. It's a remote method call where it symbolizes an operation that's happening throughout the network. So what's special about that is then the language knows about that, and this is helpful when creating a representation of this code. So actually another main aspect of the language is any code you write is represented as a sequence diagram. So the code itself is a mapping, like a mapping of a sequence diagram you do. So because of that, this can be visualized directly as a sequence diagram. So then we take the constructs that in the code, and these things like the connectors become separate actors, the caller and so on, and they have their own lifeline. And so these remote method calls becomes messages passed between those connectors. So any code you write, so any complex code, this you get automatically. So in a bigger scenario, so to get a quick idea of like what the flow is, this is automatically generated, so without doing anything. So this is dynamically done, of course. So if you do something, it will be updated in the code as well, the diagram. So so that's one of the main aspects of the language as well. So here I'm basically doing some processing with some JSON payloads. I get the response from the first request, that is to do the geolocation, and I extract the latitude and longitude coordinates, and I call a second service to get the address information. So there also I'm getting a JSON, and in Ballerina, so we have a feature called like for language integrated query, where you can query data like JSON, any list, XML data, and so on using this like SQLite syntax. So we can say, so I'm actually traversing like a complex JSON message here, which has an array inside that, and with some items uh, with the specific value. So I'm saying this element with this value return me the address there. So in the full payload, there are multiple addresses. So I'm only returning the center address of that result. So basically I'm doing that and returning it with the response. So that is done with this code. Let me quickly run it. So you can directly run, when you say Ballerina run the source file, it will build it and run it at the same time. You can also build it separately and run the binary again. But you can do that in one go with this. And now let's do a curl command and see how it works. So it should be my location. So yeah, so this is actually my address now here. It's actually my street address. So that's basically how a simple integration happens. And now let's do a quick change to this to show how observability works. So, so I can get the same application and enable observability with this. Let me get the command. So I just have to put this flag saying enable observability to my service. So what it does is it'll start up a Prometheus listener and also an open tracing publisher. So here it's Jaeger. That'll send these like provide this information to the necessary endpoints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly start up a Prometheus server, Jaeger, and Grafana actually to see the details. So here I'm just going to use Docker to start up the servers. So this is a Prometheus server, Grafana, and also Jaeger. So now Prometheus will be querying that endpoint that's there in the Ballerina program to get the metrics information. And Jaeger will be listening to like tracing information, and Grafana I'll be using to see the metrics in the Prometheus server. So let me quickly go to my Grafana server. So first thing, we have to add a data source, Prometheus. Data source. And now I can import the Grafana dashboard. So there's a default Grafana dashboard for Ballerina that you can use, or you can customize the dashboard as well. So for the general use cases, you can use that. So you can see here, we see the request information and the stats for our application. So those you basically get free. So as you send more requests, so the stats will update eventually. So you can see here like the HTTP service metrics, like the request per minute, error rates, throughput, and what are the status codes. All those things are gathered here. Also, when you have HTTP clients, also they are there. So it says, okay, what are these remote calls? You can see here where I'm calling these separate services. And also there are other things like if you are using database SQL clients, there are SQL metrics as well. So this is the default dashboard that's there. So as I said, you can customize this as well with your own widgets. So those are the metrics that are there, and also you can get the tracing information. Let me open that quickly. So you see here that the location service is listed. So I can say find traces, and the three requests I mean like I did mentioned here. So if I drill into the services, I can see here the tracing information that went through the location service and the other requests I made for the external services and so on. So you can see here the post request I did here and so on. So those kind of information can be gathered with this. So you can see the spans and those information through this tracing views. So that's it for a quick run through of that. Let me, if you have time, I can quickly show you another section where I deploy a service in Kubernetes. So I have a similar service.
Yeah.
Shafraz, do we have? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We have that.
So this again a similar Ballerina service. So it does like it uses some external connectors. So this connects to an Amazon recognition service. So it's another connector which connects to a cloud service. It does an OCR operation by giving a binary payload like an image. So this would be the image I'm sending, and I'm going to deploy this. So it's a normal service. If I build it and run it locally, it will work locally. So what I'm going to do is just by adding these extra annotations, it will automatically generate the artifacts that's needed to deploy to Kubernetes. So let me just build it. So I'm going to do Ballerina build. And what it does is the compiler identifies that, okay, this program has these annotations and it engages this extension and does this extra set of operations to create the Docker image and create the Kubernetes artifacts to deploy to a Kubernetes cluster. So I have a Kubernetes cluster already configured locally. So we don't have anything locally now. Let me just run the command that was given in the compile output. And you can see here our deployment is there now. Also, we have a service running. So it's mentioned this OCR service here. Let me do a curl command and execute that as well. Let me get the sample. So I use node port here. So I have used the port that is mentioned here. I'm just sending the binary data of this image to the service, which is forwarded to the connector that I'm using. Oops. Okay, let's see the request and the response. Yeah. So you see here, I got the image OCR and the text response is shown here, and this all happened through Kubernetes because we directly deployed the service into Kubernetes and used it from there. So you can now easily like configure any other operations as well, like load balancing, and any of the other aspects can be defined here as well. So there are a lot of other attributes that are here. So to customize the deployment information as well. So yeah, that's a quick demo of the thing. As you saw, like Ballerina services, how to do observability, how to deploy it in a environment like Kubernetes. So we have similar functionality for things like serverless platforms, as I mentioned earlier, for Lambda, issue functions, and so on. In the same way, you can get a Ballerina function, just annotate it some information, and the compiler takes care of the rest. It creates all the artifacts, and you can directly deploy them to your infrastructure. So, yep,
That's interesting.
so that's it for my
That's
demo.
Remo.
Yep.
Awesome. So Anjana, we have like a bunch of questions coming in as well. So let me pull one by one. Um, yeah. So first question is coming from Harizuan. So Harizuan asking, when you mentioned that integration falls down programming languages, does that mean Ballerina will change a lot? Most integrations are generally quite fragile due to changes from integration um, PDS.
What is PTS?
I'm also trying to figure out. Harizwan,
Integration
just drop a
points.
comment over there. We can figure it out.
Okay.
So I think,
So not sure why he mentioned like whether it will change a lot. So my point was so the normal programming is becoming sort of like an integration activity. So that
yep,
was the point. Like day-to-day programming will most increasingly become connecting with distributed systems, connecting with other external network systems, gathering data, doing transformation, and talking to other systems and so on. So it's
yep,
becoming more of a norm when you do general programming. So
yep,
that's why I mentioned like integration is becoming part of the general day-to-day life. So that's the main point. So you still have general programming tasks. So that's why it's general programming language, general purpose programming language, while having these other abstractions to make it easier to do network level programming and integrations. So they all, in my opinion, they all go hand in hand together. So we'll continue to improve the language to like improve these abstractions, like to
yep,
make it easy to do these integrations. When you say it'll change a lot, it'll improve basically. It'll the feature wise, it'll the things will get added,
yep.
but the language itself will not change like that, like in a incompatible way. But
Yeah,
things will just feature wise will improve.
yeah. Awesome. So Lee Ting is asking a question. I'm familiar with C Sharp, JavaScript, and other programming languages. How to integrate Ballerina language with other languages?
So Ballerina currently the compiler compiles down to Java bytecode. So that's one of the runtimes we have at the moment. So we are also working on a native runtime as well, where it will create like native code, like you will find it in like Go, Rust. So at the moment it's with Java bytecode. So with that we have a Java interop layer. So it's for Java interoperability. So you can import Java classes. You can use any Java libraries you have existing ones and use them in your Ballerina programs as well. So you can create the bindings and use them. So if you have anything in Java, that can be integrated directly.
Awesome. All right. Okay. There's another question. Who will be building the integration abstraction? Is the owners of the Ballerina language maintainers or the open source community?
So okay. So the language is defined. So the specification is uh, like defined by us, like okay, mainly the people are in WSO2, but we definitely take community input in like shaping the features. So like we listen to the problems that people have, obviously, and we create like features and the functionality in the language for those. So It's a controlled activity, but but we definitely take in community feedback in shaping the language as well.
Yeah.
So yes.
I think in case if someone wants to be a part of the community, is the link. There's a Slack channel. You can give your comments over there as well. All right. So there's a question: is Ballerina garbage collected?
Yes, it is. So it is designed as a garbage collector language. So even
Yeah.
if when I mentioned it, when it will have a native runtime, it will still have the garbage collection features. So especially now, since it's running on top of the JVM, it's we get that for free at the moment. So
Yeah.
it is garbage collected, and the language is designed to be like that, and it will continue to be so.
Okay. Awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah. So has any benchmark been done to see how much of
Yeah.
workload can be? Yeah.
Yeah, workload as in especially like we have done benchmarks, some benchmarks, internal benchmarks to do like network performance and so on. So
Yeah.
since we specialize on these network aspects, we have optimized those a lot, like especially non-blocking IO and our concurrency model. So like
Yeah.
compared to like other microservices frameworks and network libraries, we have like seen a considerable performance jump, like in the situation that we have tested. So that we get because we concentrate on those aspects when we do those. So especially for network communication and those kind of workloads, Ballerina is mostly like very much optimized.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Harzwan has another question. If anybody
Mhm.
can push any module to Ballerina Central module, are the
Yes.
security concerns on this?
So we have actually thought about this. So there will be some like protocol will be implemented in Ballerina Central for these aspects. Like yes, as I mentioned, like for like security vulnerabilities and so on, if you can trust the code. So we have not got ourselves into that position to look into that in detail, but in the future, I suppose we will be bringing some protocols around that as well. But
Yeah.
at the current moment, it is unrestricted. So we do
Yeah.
not do those kind of scans or any reviews of the code or what are the modules that are there
Yeah.
in this moment. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Okay. So yeah, I think in the connections, I think it should be.
Yes. Yeah. So the database connections are also these remote connections because they mainly work through the network. So
Yeah.
those are also modeled as remote methods. So they also will be shown as these lines going through the sequence diagram as well. So any network connector that we write will have this behavior.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So we have one more question coming in, I think. Um, so that's around what if I want to integrate
So we do have an extension mechanism for that,
yeah.
but at the moment it's Prometheus and OpenRacing API that are supported.
Yeah.
So it's a Java level extension mechanism that we have to plugging in other ones,
Yeah.
other providers. But the main one we have out of the box is Prometheus for metrics at least.
Yeah.
And for tracing, it's using the OpenRacing API. So any compatible OpenRacing API like implementation
Yeah.
should be usable there.
Awesome.
So yeah.
I think we can take one more last question before we end the session for today. All right. So it says about the update.
Yes. So actually, yes, we also have seen this behavior, but unfortunately, yes, we will also have the similar restrictions or the similar problems we have for Java runtimes when it comes to
Yeah.
like Docker containers and so on. So same
Yeah.
at the moment, the same issues will be there. So that's the fact
Yeah.
actually. So yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. I think the language is evolving. That's why we need kind of people to kind of contribute. Anyone who's interested, just go and contribute, because this is that's an open community where people are trying to build a programming language. It will help the activities to make life easier for the developers to build like cloud native applications, etc. So I think that was a very good conversation, Anjana.
Oh, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you for having me.
So yeah, so definitely, it was definitely a pleasure having you, Anjana, and sorry for keeping you awake
No
for a
worries.
long time. Today, I think
That's fine.
you can have a good sleep after this session. And thank you for joining with us in a different time zone. So as we say goodbye to Anjana, before we say goodbye to Anjana, Anjana, anything that you want to share before you leave?
Yeah, so I would say, so do give Ballerina a try, like try it out, test it out. Like we are all open for feedback. Like you can propose new, like improvements, updates, anything. So join the Slack channel. So that's the best way to communicate. So you can give like any ideas there, and also just check ballerina.io for other content. I'm sure you will find it useful.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, Anjana. Thank you for joining with us. So let me put you onto the staging, and we can connect it up after this session. All
Okay.
right. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining with us today for the ballerina session. I think that was very helpful for you in terms of understanding how different technology makers are building up even programming languages to support cloud related activities. So hope that you were able to learn something new today. Please do keep in touch with us. Drop us a comment if we weren't able to answer any of our questions, and do go and join the Ballerina Slack channel as well. So you'll be able to kind of get hold of like the people who are already using Ballerina. I think we had a good number of viewers joining with us in different part of the region in Southeast Asia. Thank you for that, and I hope we'll be able to meet up soon again with another episode of Cloud Colombo. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay healthy, and do wear a mask. Thank you, and we'll see you again.